Hello, friends. Welcome to this webinar, which is all about creativity, innovation, technology, and a lot of amazing things. We are just waiting for a few more people to join us. I think we'll wait for another 2 minutes or so, and then we shall start. Today's topic is limitless possibilities of technology. Little little description would be new technology and how it can benefit jewelry designers. A lot of innovation has been happening in the field of jewelry technology, and Tanmay Shah, the team of Imaginarium, he is with us today to explain to us what they are doing in this cool place called Imaginarium. So I think we have a good number of audience. So let's begin the session. Tanmay, welcome to this amazing platform which is created by Jewelry Outlook magazine. Thanks to David and Jayam. They've been really working hard during this lockdown and to created this good platform where a lot of knowledge sharing has been happening. So welcome on board. And guys, I'll be your host today and Tanmay will be the innovator on board. Tanmay, before you'd start talking about technology, I want to know what is Imaginarium. You know, the name itself is so cool. The first time I heard the word Imaginarium, it actually starts making you think. Okay, so what is Imaginarium?
Sure, Preeta. Thank you so much. So good afternoon and good evening based on where you're coming from. This is the first time I'm doing a webinar, so please excuse any technical glitches, but let's begin right off. So Preeta, great question. As you can imagine, a lot of thought went behind giving the name Imaginarium. But it has a very simple story to it, that just like you have an aquarium, you basically need a place for ideas and imagination to thrive, where you can come into a space with an idea and leave out with that idea in your hand, no matter what it may be. Okay. So that's a simple but a very profound idea of Imaginarium. And if I may take you through some of the things that we do, I think you'll get a little more context to it. So I think let's jump straight into it.
Yeah, sure.
So here's where we work. We're a bunch of 300 creative people, and we're really passionate about helping other creative people to bring their ideas to life. Think in 3D greets you as soon as you enter this office, primarily because we've failed to realize, but our entire world has become 2D. Every interaction that we have with technology is on a two-dimensional screen, and that kind of clogs the way we imagine and visualize space.
Right.
So our foundation began with the technology of 3D printing more than a decade ago. And currently we're headquartered in Mumbai, India, with a fantastic facility, which you can also see some glimpses of over here.
I have been to their office and the facility, and trust me, guys, it is amazing. You can spend days. You can spend days in that office and just looking at so much thing that is happening around you. It's fun.
It really is like the aquarium for ideas.
It is.
So what we do here is, one part of our business is a really cool factory, but it's not just any factory. It literally is a marriage of advanced technology with expert craftsmanship. So we've got at the same time some of the most advanced 3D printers. Sitting next to them are veteran craftsmen coming from the fields of not just jewelry. What you see over here are the different businesses that we do. So Imaginarium Precious is where we help the jewelry industry. Anyone who's making a precious, fine fashion accessory, whatever it is, we work with those kinds of materials. But beyond that, there are domain experts who understand how to engineer a product. If it's a car, if it's a new sensor or a smartwatch that you're making, it requires much more than just one person to bring that to life.
Okay.
Interestingly, there is also a team that works on biomedical applications. So the human body is kind of the most customized machine there is, and therefore each human needs a customized solution. So this team of biomedical engineers comes up with implants, surgical guides, prosthetic arms, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Apart from that, there's a bunch of consultants who can help our clients pick the right technology. So if you're setting up a studio or a workshop, we can also help you decide which machine, what material, what software you might need. Of course, we have the academy, which is purely engaged in outreach. How can we spread the word of advanced technology meeting creativity? Because we realize not much is being taught in schools, and a creative person needs to be equipped when they enter the market. So that's the other part. And then we have our ventures arm that kind of invests in exciting ideas. So that's a discussion for a later time, but a team at Imaginarium is constantly on the lookout for people who apply the latest and the greatest in technology, building their businesses. So that's a quick overview of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We're like an ecosystem which you can approach for your ideas. Yeah. So, Preetha, do you want to set the context for why we're talking about jewelry and technology today?
Well, I think what I feel is that until unless we innovate, things will not move. Our industry, in my opinion, at times I feel is gone very saturated with the basic stone and metal jewelry. There is metal which is precious or semi-precious, and then there are gemstones of all kinds, diamonds and gemstones, and it's a lot. There's a lot of saturation.
Yeah.
Now, if we start innovating, the audience has matured enough, or I would say has become experimental enough to accept newer materials, newer technology, newer look. They want something different. They want something unique for themselves. There is a need for, I want to be different from the crowd. Everybody wants to be different in a crowd. Now, if everybody wants to be different in a crowd, imagine the kind of customization and personalization that is needed. And I had, across my journey as an influencer, as a journalist, come across a lot of young designers, a lot of companies where there is a desire to do something different, but they're not able to do it. They don't know how to do that innovation. So that is why I thought that, this kind of a conversation is necessary to open up the minds that, a lot is possible.
I completely agree with you. And the fact that you mentioned two things, adapting to change quickly enough and solving for a need. In fact, even in the last month or two, with this entire lockdown, global lockdown pandemic situation that we're in, we found ourselves in that same spot where we realized that we call ourselves this advanced manufacturing unit, but the need of the hour is a lot of new customized products to be made and delivered to the frontline warriors who are fighting this pandemic. And that was very quickly what's been keeping us busy is while we've shut down all the other businesses in the last few weeks, a few of us got together to take an idea and scale it up for this need. So here's a face shield that you see, and you must have heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
We've got our own version of it, which pretty much was in 7 days, we went from a sketch to a 3D printed model to a laser cut piece, and now we're injection molding 10,000 a day.
That's a huge number.
Absolutely. It's taught us so much about every challenge that a product finds along its way. But lessons from here very directly apply to jewelry, very directly apply to any other field. So I think that's what I'd love to share with you today. Let's begin. I think everyone in some way or the other is thinking about this, that what changes when everything around you changes?
That's like the big question for today. Like everything changed.
Exactly. There is change, and along with that, you can either have fear and uncertainty, which is natural, but you can also have a lot of optimism and a clean slate to begin something new.
Yeah.
So I think the rules haven't changed since I think the universe started, that the survival of the fittest, and by fittest I mean those who can adapt fastest to changing times. That's still very true. So all I'd like to focus on is what are the changes happening as we speak in our industry, and how can we adapt to them quickly enough to ensure survival. There's no need for fear, to be honest. So here's a photo of 21st century millennials. Would you agree with me? I highly doubt. But I'm serious when I refer to these historic photos as a bunch of millennials, because it's a highly abused term, especially so in the world of jewelry, fashion, apparel, where every turn you take, there's a conversation happening about how do we cater to millennials. There's this mystical aura around this new
Yes,
generation.
absolutely. Like every day jewelers are trying to find solutions to how to cater to this new audience of millennials who want change, who want new things every day.
Absolutely, I'm guilty of it myself. But when I think of it a level deeper, it's not really a generation that you're talking about. We're talking about a bunch of qualities, traits, and personalities that need to be catered to. And I don't think anyone on this audience would disagree that humans forever have wanted to stand out from their immediate neighbors, no matter how you define the word neighbors. Now, if 200 years ago your neighbor lived 500 meters away from you, then you wanted to stand out and self express. Today, if you're connected to everyone halfway across the world as well, then that's your neighborhood. But the need to stand out, to own something that is meaningful, and to put it out there in the world as a representation of your true self, that does not change. And if you follow those criteria, then I think you are also a millennial. That's what this image talks about. I think in those times, more than ever right now, people had the coolest ways to self-express, to experiment, to stand out. I think as of today, in the lockdown, 100% of the guys I see on the internet, they're sporting the same look that I have. This is the quarantine look. And that is no means of self-expression. It's actually everyone's looking the same. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that the need to self-express has always been seeking a means of being fulfilled. It is only now, in recent years, that technology has made it easier. So how to cater to each consumer's need is something that we can talk about in a broader sense. Earlier, it was in the realm of luxury. If you were a royal, if you really had resources to spend, you could maybe have customized eyewear. Today, that's changed. So this is the other thing that I wanted to mention, that in an increasingly democratized world, we've lost all our excuses. What does that mean? 50 years back, if I were alive, I could have easily made the excuse that, oh damn, if I had an admission into some of the top universities in this country, I would have had the education needed to succeed. Or if I was making a fantastic product, but I was living in a remote area, my excuse was that I wish I was living in the big city where I could get more people to look at this product.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, if I had a talent that needed an audience, I could crib all my life saying, I wish I was spotted by that theater company. I wish this channel got me a break. But unfortunately, I can't be successful. All of that has completely changed.
Absolutely agree.
The world today leaves you with no excuse. So I, sitting in this room in the lockdown, can listen to courses by the world's best professors. I have access to any kind of information on my fingertips. If I have talent, I will be spotted on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, for all I know. It's not difficult to now go big. You're at a level playing field with some of the top companies who are doing the same thing as you. So platforms like Amazon, like Kickstarter, and so many others like Google, they've made the world a more level playing field, except the last frontier that was not yet democratized was the ability to make a physical product. to make from a concept to a working, safe and usable product, it required way too many resources, which was prohibitive. And that's why a lot of ideas die in the sketchbook. But I'd like to make the point that maybe that is changing. We're in a transition where even that last frontier of making physical products is changing. So that's the core of my talk today, which is about how can we adapt and have a new toolkit at our disposal.
Okay, before we start with the toolkit, I would like to do a little poll. We have set up a few questions for the polls today. In between, I will keep putting one up. So first, we would like to know who are the audience today. You know, we have a huge number of audience today. Thanks everybody who's joined us. But in order to guide better in terms of the toolkit, you know, what toolkit that Tanmay is talking about, let's do a little poll, and I'm going to launch the poll here. What do you all do? Okay, I am going to start a timer for 60 seconds. So request everybody to just fill in the answers quickly.
Do we have prizes?
To what do you all do? That kind of a question doesn't get a prize.
So while everyone's, I think, answering,
Yeah.
quickly set context so it doesn't get a little silent.
Yeah.
So here's the toolkit, okay? And I could very well be.
We're almost done. Let's just
Sure.
end the poll and release the information so that then we can properly continue the toolkit. I think we're almost done. Has everybody voted? Okay. So we have a majority of jewelry designers who have joined us today. We have a few entrepreneurs, we have a few manufacturers, few retailers and others. Okay, so almost a 47 to 50% audience today is a jewelry designer, who are the most creative people, you know, in the whole bunch. That's the start of the creative journey, a design book, I would say. And I'm so glad that we have so many jewelry designers in the session today. So for everybody who's joined in, Tanmay will now take you through the toolkit. It's a modern jeweler's toolkit.
So the secret to this is that I could pretty much apply this toolkit to any topic that I'm asked to speak about, and that's what I typically do. Today we're going to contextualize it to the world of jewelry design. But the fundamentals of any process of creation, I think you guys know it better than me, they remain the same. The tools you apply, they change. So let's begin. One of the first new tools in your toolkit, which I really think you must have, is the tool to co-create with your user. How do you humanize the product and the process, which earlier you were limited to by physical constraints, that maybe you could understand the need by generalizing the problem. So most user research, it kind of ends up in a demographic that tells you a very vague answer, that okay, a 25 to 30-year-old female living in an urban settlement would like to buy a product. So it does not give me any actionable insights. But as we'll see further, there's a lot you can now do with technology. Next, if you're trying to solve problems one-on-one, the aim being that I want to solve an end customer's problem uniquely, then you need to also show them, without assuming any kind of imagination, what that product will be. How useful will it be? What will it look like? And that's where I'll be talking about advanced visualization. Once the cycle of iterations, the back and forth of needs, etc., is locked in, you need to find a way to make one single product which is as good as it gets, but also it should not be prohibitively expensive just because you're making a single quantity. So that's where a problem most of us face about minimum orders and finding a factory that is even interested in one piece. But maybe that's changing with the world of digital fabrication. After that, there's a lot that you can do to close the loop once you make that first product. By KYC, I mean know your customer, know your consumer. I think we've reached a stage where digital KYC and digital empathy is now possible. The skills that were earlier taught as going into the field and doing research, making observations, they're as relevant as ever, but you only need to realize that there is an added field or an added space for observation, which is the digital world. So knowing your customer in the digital space can give you tremendous insights on that next iteration. And finally, if we tie all this together, I think the world has pushed us without a choice towards storytelling. That if you cannot think of tying together a story and an experience, CXD stands for customer experience design, then your product has no space in this world. So the toolkit is actually the journey that you follow in design. And I'll briefly touch upon, because today I've not kept it too technical. We're kind of touching the surface of all of these. So co-creation, right? I'm extremely interested in finding out how can we design for markets of one. Whenever we think of a market, it's actually a very large group. It kind of is a big blur in our minds. And we hope that a product put into that market will sell. But what if your market was the size of one individual? It needs to get economical enough for us to know the needs of that one individual, to have the tools that give us information and also allow for designing. So the buzzwords at this stage, of course, are parametric design, generative design. You've got the ability to capture the anthropomorphic data of human beings through 3D scanning. So what you see on the top left of your screen, a bunch of cameras, if they click a photo from multiple angles, they can instantly give you the dimensions and the sizes of your customer. Now, if you're designing clothes, if you're designing jewelry, if you're designing accessories, being able to match it to the dimensions of your customer is a fantastic skill. When you add to that the ways to generate designs beyond the possibilities of a human designer, I think that changes the paradigm completely. Generative design is when you use a computer and algorithms as your partner in the design process. So we'll take questions on that later. I don't want to delve too much into it. But the first tool is humanizing through co-creation. Now imagine I've got actual specific data about my customer, their dimensions, and I can, in my mind as a designer, sketch a product. But how will I ever get the buy-in of this customer if they don't have the ability to visualize? And that is not, you should not even expect anyone to. How do you show a product before it's made? That's where advanced photorealistic visualizations come in. Now, all of us are familiar with movies that we see which have computer-generated imagery that we cannot distinguish from reality anymore. It's that same core set of technologies that is now at the disposal of designers like yourselves. All the images that you see on the screen, none of them have been manufactured. Each of them is a render that can be infinitely customized. It can be rotated and revolved in 360 degrees. With certain other technology, maybe you can even get a customer to try it on their finger or on their neck. You see some more imagery. These are absolutely stunning photos, which a few years back you could not ever dream of. If you've seen e-commerce websites with some poor renders, I think it does more harm than good for the fine jewelry industry. One does not feel like buying that product. But what you're seeing here, the stones, the luster, the shine of the metal, now that's a service that can be availed. And at Imaginarium, we've created a separate company altogether that focuses on this. Jewelry is just one application. Imagine taking this into home furniture, into entire luxury segments of buying a car, things like you can now change every aspect of the design, look at it in 3D, and then get convinced. So step 2 is over. We've now got a buy-in from your final customer who loves the design, they've told you all the tweaks that they want. You've been able to do it without spending $1 on prototyping. How do you proceed from there? With basic prototyping tools, you can obviously make a single piece that kind of matches the final product. But very few partners are interested in manufacturing a customized piece and give it the same amount of effort that they would give to a mass manufactured product. Enter 3D printing. Now, I'm going to speak to those who have never heard of it, okay? So 3D printing sounds like science fiction. Technically, it's called additive manufacturing. But at the core of it, it is nothing other than one more process to manufacture jewelry or anything. Typically, when you start with, say, a block of metal and you carve a piece out of it, you're removing material, and that's called subtractive manufacturing. 3D printing is the opposite. If you can design something on a software and that digital design file is fed into this machine, it basically adds material layer upon layer to give it the final shape and form of your original design. So it replicates digital designs, converts bits into atoms, physical products. Now,
Tanmay, can I interrupt? I have a question.
Please do.
You just said there's a subtractive method and there is an additive method. Okay.
Yes.
What would be the difference between the kind of technique chosen depending on the product? How would you decide this product needs a subtractive method and this product needs a additive method?
That's a great question. Just to beat around the bush, I think a lot of people have dismissed 3D printing because they tried to recreate the same products that were designed for subtractive manufacturing and said that, can a 3D printer make it? While it can make it, it's not the best option to make it. So what I'm arriving at is that each tool has its own set of constraints and possibilities, and it should be used accordingly. So with 3D printing, the advantages at your disposal are complete design freedom. So while you could not earlier cast a few kinds of designs, or you could never use a CNC machine, or a hand craftsman could never carve that intricately, 3D printers don't care about the complexity of a design. It could be as intricate as you want. The machine simply adds layer upon layer of material to recreate it. So number one, it does not distinguish complexity. The other big advantage with 3D printing is it does not require you to make a mold or go in for mass manufacturing. Every time you make a product, it is 3D printed once again. So the bad thing about it is, how do you mass manufacture? Well, maybe you have to have a combination of processes. But the good side of it, when you don't want to mass manufacture and you want to make one piece, a 3D printer is your best choice. Third, which follows from the second, is customization. Even if the design is same and you want to add your customer's name or their fingerprint on each of those pieces, the same batch of 3D printed products can have customizations added to them at no additional cost.
But then that can also happen in the subtractive method, right?
Absolutely.
But what is, my question is again the same, that, why I will choose subtractive method for product A versus additive method for product B? What are the difference between the product that needs to, how do you identify?
Sure. So I'll put it this way. If you could compare the time it took to manufacture a product,
Mm-hmm.
and if it was simple enough to be made subtractively or even through the traditional the carving process, there is no real need to move to 3D printing unless there is a major cost advantage, unless you need to make customized pieces, or there is a technical requirement that cannot be fulfilled. So for example, if certain metals cannot be CNC machined, and I understand even subtractive methods are not the most popular in jewelry, but for a moment imagine that there is a material limitation which can only be done through casting. A combination approach is the most suitable. I'll give you one quick example. Most of the jewelry we make at Imaginarium, it's around 2000 unique pieces every day. They go through a 3D printing of wax, and that wax then goes through our traditional investment casting process.
Right.
It's not that I am eliminating the old process, but if I had to only choose the traditional process, I could maybe do 50 designs, 100 designs a day, and not 2000. So it's that combination that you redesign and use the best of all your resources.
Okay.
So the other interesting thing here is, like I mentioned, it's one more tool, right? But you also need to know what can I do with this tool. So maybe a topic for another seminar altogether is what are the materials that can be 3D printed? What are the combinations that can be put together with additive, subtractive, casting processes, which lead to completely new kinds of designs? But for our practical purposes, there's two distinctions you need to understand. That 3D printing as an intermediate step is the wax printing that I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. But the future is also going to be about printing directly in precious metals. A 3D printer that takes as the input a digital design, and the output will be a gold sintered piece. Again, technically going a little far, but gold powder getting stuck together to give you the shape of that jewelry. It eliminates wax models, it eliminates mold making, it eliminates investment casting altogether. All you need to do is take that gold piece and put it through the polisher, and you have a finished usable piece of jewelry. That's a future that we are staring at already. Gold, silver, you've got all kinds of titanium that are possible. You can directly print these metals today.
Okay.
So the point here, as the third tool, you need to be made aware that it's now possible to make that one piece, no matter how complex. Let's go on to the next one. So these are just some more examples. So these colored pieces you see, right? Even these come from a 3D printer. But look at the complexity. It's impossible to make this by hand. It's near impossible to machine this in a subtractive way. And therefore, the only way forward is 3D printing. But this is not metal printed. It's a resin that then gets cast. So an intermediate process. Having said that, if we're calling this digital fabrication, then do we still need to work in the old paradigm of having to walk into a dusty factory, sitting with the experts there and trying to get your idea across? But there's always a loss in communication, a loss in translation. Well, not anymore. For accessing digital manufacturing, we've also created completely digital platforms, which we're calling our precious online factory. So what this does is, if you've got a digital design file, no matter where you're sitting in the world, you can upload that design, and get access to our entire library of materials. These materials range from precious, non-precious metals, to even wax and resin, all the kinds of in-between processes that you might need. And they let you visualize your design, get an instant quotation for it, and you can literally place an order and receive your finished product in 5 days. So this is why it's called an online factory. It eliminates all the earlier challenges of trying to email a file or carry a pen drive to the factory, or worse, trying to explain the design over a non-digital means of communication. So for anyone who's
Tanmay,
interested,
I have
sure.
a question. So for example, I am a jewelry designer, okay, and I know CAD. I have done my CAD course and I know how to create a 3D design in CAD, but I need help in manufacturing, and I only sell through CAD drawings to my clients. And can I set up a factory like this with you and upload my CAD drawings and choose the material according to my order? Is that possible?
Absolutely. We've got an order from Catalog, an online catalog, which is, once you create an account, it's only visible to you. And that catalog consists of all your unique designs. Now, if you make a sale, if you've shown your client a visual render and they say, yes, I don't want it in yellow gold, can you make it in white gold?
Okay.
No problem. You go into this online catalog, you choose the material, you know how much it's going to cost, place the order for one piece, and that's fine. There are no minimum orders required. So yes, it is possible to run your business off this.
And what if I don't know CAD and I know how to beautifully draw my jewelry? I don't know CAD. I can draw in 3D, but I can only draw by a pencil, by hand. So then do I upload a design and your team kind of comes in between to make a CAD for it and then?
Absolutely. There's an entire team that helps convert a sketch or a reference image into a 3D model. And we do that for all kinds of clients. They're independent designers, large brands, e-commerce players, everyone.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So moving on. This was just another tool in your toolbox now. Here's where things get interesting, right? To each one, once your first product sells, you're thirsting for feedback. You want to know that how was it liked, disliked, did it work the way it was intended? And can you improve very quickly onto the next product? As an add-on to your current ways of doing it, I think we're all aware of the power of the internet, social media, and most importantly, the data that consumers are sharing about their likes and dislikes online. So can we think of merging what's on the left, which is empathy through the intuitive process, the heartfelt process, going and talking and having a real conversation, which is equally important. Can we merge that with somebody's digital footprint? Because oftentimes consumers express something, but they behave in very different ways. So as a designer, you also have to think of yourself as a researcher, as a scientist. If you can put together insights and quickly loop them back into your design, I think you're an unstoppable machine who's bound for success. So this slide is primarily to stop, ponder, and think that am I using all the information available, or am I working purely on preconceived notions about my consumer? Of course, when all of this comes together, there's no escaping the storytelling and the experience bit. If you can't tell a powerful enough, engaging enough, and a meaningful enough story for the consumer, nothing's going to move ahead. And we've got enough examples. You can maybe, each of you on this call right now might be buyers of products that you've customized yourselves. Ask yourselves, did that customization process make you feel more connected to the product? Were you a little more forgiving to any flaws in that product? Did you not become an ambassador of that brand or the product by telling all your friends that, look, I made this. If there's a great story and an experience to all of the above, I think that's the only way to capture attention today. It's the default. So here on my screen, there are your the Nike ID line of shoes, which you could completely customize. You could look at it, you could maybe add a few pieces of personalization, but just the process of making makes you feel a little more connected to that creation. Another example in shirts. For you even in these processes, you get the full spectrum of users, right? There are your power users who are connoisseurs. They know what they want. They will go into every little detail and they will demand the best from you. On the other end of the spectrum is the confused buyer who doesn't want to think too much, and too much choice paralyzes. So be very careful by not mixing up the word customization with more variety. Sometimes customization can mean giving that customer the only choice that they were going to like. How do we solve for that? Your guess is as good as mine. But this is another example for all of us to ponder on. Now at Imaginarium,
Sorry, can
yes.
we just go back? I want to ask you something. So for example, this slide, what you were saying that, at times too much choice also can paralyze a customer's mind. In this slide, if I have to design, customize a shirt for probably my husband like this, I would say, sorry, I'll go to the shop and buy one. This is just too much of choice, and maybe the final product I might not even like, because I don't understand the mechanics of a garment. I will say, okay, this color looks nice, this cuff looks nice, this fabric looks nice. But in the end, when it actually comes to my house, I might say, oh God, what an ugly combination, So
Absolutely.
It's just too much choice. But should we simplify the choice? Should we still leave it to the customer? What is your opinion on that?
I completely agree with you that sometimes it can be have a negative impact on what you were trying to do. But there are always creative solutions to this. I've seen, I don't remember the brand, but it had the best waterfall customization effect. Why do I call that? Because at the surface level, you only had one or two options. Say, for example, style and color. It maybe was a handbag configurator. So for a lay user who doesn't want too much choice, if they like a style and they like one color, you merge the two and give them that. But at each stage, they actually had a feature where you could fine tune. So when you go deeper into style, it gives you 5 more options or 3 more options. Within those, it keeps getting more and more complex. So for those who want to go down that path, they have the option. For those who really don't care, it still is a simple enough journey. You can stop at the first level itself.
So you saying that it can be like a one thing in leads to the other sort of kind of a customization, instead of putting everything on the screen like in this one.
Absolutely.
Here there is collars, there is styles, there is color, there is fabric, there is thread. Everything is together in the you see the slide and you don't want to go through this process.
Yeah, this
I
is
personally don't want to go through this.
Aircraft dashboard to me. It intimidates instantly.
Yeah, so that's a better idea, that you do a stepwise customization. You warm the idea, you get the customer get into that mood of customization, start enjoying the process, and then they would want to explore more. Or if they don't want to explore more, they are done with it, they have the option to check out and place their order.
100%.
Okay, perfect.
So this was another example where we've applied it to the world of fashion accessories, especially for men. And I'll get to this slide later on, but the fact is that I'm trying to show the variety of applications with the same basic set of tools. So here's how a lapel pin could get customized. Not going to spend too much time there. Another example, that you've got these apps that help you visualize cosmetics, makeup, a different look. Maybe in the future, maybe you could pre-visualize a haircut before you even go to your the salon, but it doesn't really stop anywhere. There are no limits right now, but how you use them, that's where the role of a designer is critical. sometimes people assume that the tools are available, the product will make itself. The choices that a designer makes eventually, no matter how invisible, they're 100% the contributing factor to the success or failure of a product. So we're at the cusp of even such technologies coming into the space of retail. Now imagine if we're not going to be able to step out of our houses for a few more months or even a year. We could still sit at home and walk through a digital retail shop. We could still interact with products through virtual reality, through augmented reality. There's also haptic feedback that lets you kind of get the feel, the touch and feel of a product. I mean, these are early days, but I have no doubt that this will form an important part of the retail and the customer experience.
Absolutely. Okay, before we go to the next section, there's another question that I have for all the audience. 1 second. Okay, so here is the question, and you all have 60 seconds. What are the most common challenges you face in your business? This would help us put together the second part of the question presentation. Another 60 seconds. Our second part of the presentation is going to be more technical, where Tanmay would be sharing actual technology based products, where he will show examples of what they have created and what is the technical investment that they have done into creating that kind of a unique product. Let's see, we have almost 50% votes. Let's wait for another 20 seconds. We have a lot of questions for Tanmay. Tanmay, be prepared. Huh? There's a whole lot of questions, and people who are, while you are listening to this presentation, if there's any questions that you have in mind, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. Please feel free, ask as many questions. We will answer at the end of this session as many possible. I think we have managed to get as many answers. So here is the result. Tanmay, most of the people say that finding new customers and reaching the right audience is the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. Second largest feedback is that lack of innovation and adaptation to change, which is primarily what we are talking about here, is that, you know, that adaptation to change is also a fear. You know, we get so comfortable in our scenarios, in whatever we are doing and whatever we are selling. Okay, we are doing this, it's been selling for past 10 years, let's keep doing this. That fear to change, to adapt into something new, to explore a new technology is a very, very big concern. And I hope some bits of your next part of your presentation make people lose that fear and adapt to better technology. Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for those inputs. I think the next part is simply to tell you that there is no one answer from putting together this toolbox, nor is it a complete toolbox. But using some of these triggers can lead to a lot of different kinds of end applications that emerge. So for example, what you're seeing here is a parametric ring designer. Now this is a little interface that can be made or exposed to your consumers on their apps or on a website. It could also be in a physical store on an iPad. But what am I trying to highlight over here? So the old paradigm was of a designer being the creator of an end product. I think that world has to completely change itself to a designer thinking of herself as the creator of tools and a set of resources that the customer will put together as per their need. When you think of it that way, first of all, it just relieves you of a lot of burden of being always right. And two, it immediately includes into your fold all your consumers. It's like a group process rather than a single person sitting in a room. And it still can have the elements of uniqueness, storytelling, good aesthetic design, of course. This example specifically that you're seeing, uh, there's a tool out there that allows you to make your parametric designs. This one has the story of, imagine throwing a pebble in a still lake. The surface of that lake would start showing the ripples, which kind of can make infinite patterns based on how hard you've thrown the stone, how many stones have been thrown, what's the size of that lake, things like that. But imagine linking that uniqueness to something that is meaningful to the end customer. If you allow them to play with these, but you label them differently, can you weave a story around it? If not this design, can you link something to their date of birth? Can you link something to the 4 words that they feel describe them the best? Can you match 2 different personalities, the gift giver and the recipient of a gift, and come up with a unique parametric design? That's just a direction to think in. Very, very exciting as far as I can tell. Because
Tanmay, just go back to that slide.
Sure.
Can this application, the parametric design, apply to any kind of a product, like any surface, any shape, form, or is it restrictive?
I'd like to say yes, but obviously there are restrictions which come on a design to design basis. So
Okay.
broadly speaking, if it's manufacturable, it can be parametrically designed. If these 2 conditions are met, I think infinite choices emerge. So what I'm trying to say is, if these parameters led to such a thin design that it could never be cast in metal, then no, I would have to put a stop on it.
No, what I meant was not impractical design options. Matlab,
Okay.
it's not that we getting impractical about it and trying to achieve something which is common understanding of jewelry, that it's so thin that it cannot even be casted or it cannot be worn, it will break. But I'm saying at a surface area, in terms of necklaces, earrings, bangles, in terms of the kind of products that jewelry world has, can this technique be applied to all these kind of products?
Absolutely, yes, it can be.
Okay, perfect.
So some ways of talking about it, right? So why are we even doing this? I think for those of you who have started your brand or your studio and have tried to sell your products, these are eventually the fruits of your labor. And it's not wrong to get attached to your creation. But oftentimes we see that the customer just does not get the value that you put into that product. They might not consider it design good enough to be paid for. They might not realize that it's not just precious metals that makes a product precious. Well, I think we as designers also need to know one thing, that value is a filter that is applied only by the person who's going to make the purchase and the person who's going to use that product. If it's a gift that's given to a third person. So all that is in our control are avenues and facets for these users to attach value to the product. How do I shift the lens of perceived value from the carats and the grams and the weight of that material to something that is more emotional, something that's more meaningful, and that does not care for the physicalness of the product? So on the top right, as you can obviously figure out, imagine if your baby's newborn baby or a toddler's first crayon doodle could be converted into a wearable charm, no matter what material it is. Wouldn't you want to possess that product and pay any amount for it? Because the sentimental value exceeds any other price that I can put on that product. If I could keep that forever and ever, then yes, I want it now. Suppose it's something that was meaningful to you from a lost near and dear one. And if I could capture that and convert it into a product, a piece of jewelry, would you come asking, is it made in gold or some other material? I guess not. And in my experience, that lens of perceived value changes instantly without having to make too much of a marketing effort. On the bottom right is an actual product that was made. So now these are common, of course, but at that time, the ring, the engagement ring itself contained on both sides a sound wave, and that sound wave was a recording of the groom telling the bride, I love you, and the bride telling the groom, I love you. And those unique sound wave patterns are forever etched into this design. And that adds an amount of sentimental value that cannot be captured by that diamond. So that's what we have to strive for, that using all these tools, can I give opportunities for my consumer to attach their own meaning and value? And that's what you see on the left in a very, very basic and simple way. The platform and the brand that we've created for men's accessories, in its earliest stage, it allows you to change the color so that aesthetically you're happy. It allows you to add your initials, which seems to be a novelty, but we were blown away. In the first 200 stores that had this digital interface, almost every product that was sold was the one that could allow the addition of your name initials. We did not expect that, but we realized that personalization, no matter how simple, is a hotcake. Our future endeavor is going to be how can we add more and more personalization dimensions to this. So imagine being able to record your voice, have your own handwriting, record a sound wave and make it part of that cufflink or that tie bar. That's just the beginning. We're trying to make this a platform that can be accessed by anyone to make their products personalizable. So this is just another example of how can we shift the lens of value. Well, another way to shift that lens. This is a really cool new brand called Foundry. It's by a very talented designer, Shrishti Gupta, who's worked with Imaginarium as well. Her insight was simple, that it does not require precious materials to make something that is precious and meaningful. So what you're seeing on the screen are actually, there's a special nylon material that has been 3D printed to create these absolutely complex forms. They can't be made any other way. It's very difficult. And even if you would cast some of them in metal, it would be way too heavy. So my learnings from working with Shrishti have been that if a good designer puts together available resources innovatively enough, I think you don't need to worry about how can I charge for the effort that's been put in? How can I value my products more? So this combination of craftsmanship, readily available materials, and some extremely advanced 3D printed materials, that is her brand.
I must say the earrings look gorgeous. The ones the model is wearing, they look. I have seen these earrings in person, and they look really amazing. And for the audience, I would like to show this. This is a ring. If you can see this ring in my hand, I'm wearing this today to show everybody. This is actually the same material that Tanmay is talking about, and it was a very small label or a small brand that I saw in a flea market in Rome recently, and he was selling these rings. And the best part was that if you see carefully, can you see this groove on each side? So he had a box full of gemstones. So if this ring can accommodate an oval gemstone, he had a box full of gemstones in every color of ovals. And he had a screwdriver. So you can actually customize the color you want. So you can quickly take this one out, put in whichever color. So I had like a whole array of like 25 colors to choose from. He had different shapes. There was marquise, there were princess cut, there were all kind of shapes in every color. And all he had to do was just remove the stone, put in whichever color the customer wants, and that's it. And it's a beautiful ring. The material, I've been wearing it. I have washed my hands. It's become wet. It's dried out. It's still the same. There is nothing happened to this material. It's a very very cool material. It's very lightweight as well. You know, it doesn't. It's not heavy. The only weight I think in this ring is the gemstone. So the whole brand was on this concept of a unique material clubbed with some colored gemstones which have a precious value to it. And the idea of customization, that even if you're in a flea market, whatever dress you're wearing, you can actually change the color according to that and start wearing the ring right then and there. That okay, you know, we fix the color and that's it. So it's a very, very cool material.
Absolutely. And to some of the audience, I'd like to nudge or rather challenge. Can you come up with something as radical as merging eventually a plastic with gold and still communicate value, still have it communicate self-expression? If you can, then we're really, really talking. Try it out. All right. How do we also push the boundaries technically? We've spoken a lot about, say, materials, of course, but the experience, customization, the user. But even at a core technical craft level, I think these technologies have opened up boundaries that never existed. So this product that you see, and I'll very quickly show you another animation as well.
Can I do a little poll before it's
about
this
do.
product?
Please do.
Okay, guys, but one last poll question for everyone. It's I'm going to launch it now. Direct, what is your understanding of direct metal 3D printed jewelry? You know, so just a little insight we would like to know, so we can talk about it exactly in that way. What do you think is 3D printed jewelry, metal 3D printed jewelry? Oh, I think everybody is just eagerly looking forward to try it out. That's like, because it is a very very cool idea that you can 3D print direct metal. It's a breakthrough, I think, in the industry. You don't need to link it. There's accuracy. It's just phenomenal. It's beautiful. I think we've got a lot of answers. So I'm gonna end the poll now and share the results. So 82% people are eagerly looking forward to try it out. So let's understand this technology a little better. And Tanmay, over to you.
This is really fantastic, because it's not every day that a lot of people in jewelry want to change. Technology comes in maybe much later than some of the advanced industries. In old parlance, things like aerospace, automotive, they use the new technology first. But this is one opportunity where jewelry can adapt to some of the latest advancements and make a good use of it. So this, what you're seeing, while this is not directly 3D printed, it is unique in the sense that the bracelet was cast as a single piece. How we've done that, etc., is a topic for another day. But look at the flexibility that you get on some of these products. So it's a two-sided bracelet on the left, completely flexible, flows like water. And of course, it required 3D printing, without which it would not work. But there has been no manual linking of each cell that you see. And on the right is another design that was 3D printed in nylon. And you can see that colors can be added and attachments, you can fuse it with metal. But again, the one on the right was also only 3D printed. There has been no manual intervention or linking that has happened. So that level of design freedom is already available. Now, when you take that a notch higher, I already touched upon it, but being able to 3D print precious metals directly will change the game, because the complexity, imagine micro or nano size structures being linked together to make almost feather light necklaces, something that fits perfectly. It does not have any folds. but you don't even feel it. Or earrings for that matter, which sometimes get too heavy. If you could 3D print metal with hollow lattice structures and still maintain aesthetic beauty, that's going to change the game. So all I'd encourage you is to look out for or search a little bit on direct metal 3D printing, which currently has only a few companies making printers for. It, of course, has its own evolution journey of being perfected, being affordable, so on and so forth. But if you want to stay ahead of the curve, this is your chance. Imaginarium this year is going to start offering services to certain experimental projects that might be 3D printed in silver or gold. And not just jewelry, we're going to be making one-of-a-kind commemorative coins, gifts, and idols that can be made. But all of this will be directly metal printed. So keep your eye out for it, but definitely a material and a process to add to your portfolio.
Okay.
So that brings me to the end of what I had to say. Really looking forward to the questions now.
No, I think that was a very interesting session, Tanmay. It actually opens your mind to think. You know, it instigates everyone. I hope it did that. You know, you start thinking. And to all my friends who are there listening to us, I would request you to put down as many questions as you want in the Q&A box, and we'll try and answer a few right now. And then if we've left out any questions, we will try and answer them via email, via WhatsApp, via numbers, whatever. We have your information. We'll try and answer each and every question. So please leave as many questions, doubts, queries you have in the Q&A box. Here are our contact details. If anybody wants to contact either of us, we are always ready to answer. Tanmay, before I start asking questions from the audience, I have one question of my own. Okay.
Yes, please.
Being the host, I have a privilege. So, see, overall, my thought process was that, you know, it's such a cool place. And imagine if I was 14 years ago, I was a student and I see such a presentation and I think, oh my God, this is like so cool a place to work in. Even when I had visited your office, I was blown away. I wanted to spend a week there. I still do. I will come back. And it actually is like the Apple or the Google office atmosphere. You know, people are playing. There's like so much happening. There is creativity all around. There is a lot of innovation happening, machinery, technology. It is a very, very cool place to work. How and who can apply? Can, you know, one is who fits your bill, like who fits the criteria to work at a cool place like this? And secondly, how can you apply?
Sure. Thanks for that question. And thank you for the kind words. I imagine I get to work there every day. It's like the highlight of
so lucky
the entire day. So yes, I think I can answer in two ways. One, if you are thinking about working at Imaginarium, I think we're constantly on the lookout for people who have at least some degree of multidisciplinary exposure. So we love cross connections of different fields. You might find at Imaginarium a jewelry CAD artist who is designing surgical guides for some complex surgeries. You might find an automotive engineer who's working on some jewelry projects and making them more technically viable. So this space is purposely designed for the co-mingling of different experiences. Okay. And honestly, we're always on the lookout for good talent. The kinds of functions that we have internally are everything from concept design across fields to CAD artistry, sculpting digitally. We've got experts who bridge the needs of a designer and the possibilities of a manufacturing setup. So that is a very important and crucial role. We also really love working with people who have hands-on experience in making. So some of the most important hires that we've made were people who have a passion of their own. They have worked in their own studio and maybe set up a line of enameling on metal for our customers. So they were doing it as a hobby at their home, and at Imaginarium, that platform just expands to a global level. But it all happened over a conversation. So to answer how to apply, I think it's a simple email that you can send with who you are, what you like. We've got a careers page on our website, or you can just email me on the ID that's shown on the screen. But having said that, that's the old paradigm of getting a job. I think what's more interesting is how can we collaborate and still work together, where you get to access the space of Imaginarium, the expertise, the tools, and have an idea of your own. So that's what excites me more. If any of you have a collaborative project, something that you'd want a few more eyeballs on, a little more technical help, anything, feel free to still continue writing to me. We can work together for a project collaboration.
Okay, perfect. I think let me start by asking questions. There's a long list of questions.
Oh,
okay, we'll start as many as possible. There's Pinang Vora, he's asking, is it possible to make jewelry as 3D printed in gold and platinum right from the design stage?
So right from the design, I'm assuming that after the design is made, if nothing else has to be done, yes. That's what the 3D printer, a gold 3D printer would do. That your design is the only input to the machine, and out comes a piece that might have to still be polished, finished, etc. But it's still a gold jewelry. So the answer is yes, but the caveat is that there are a lot of technical and commercial hurdles to be solved till that's accessible to all.
Okay. There's Utsav Teji, he's asking that there's 3D printing, there are some restrictions also. You know, what are the restrictions of 3D printing? Yes, technology for precious metals is still developing, but otherwise, what are the restrictions and difficulties in 3D printing?
Sure. One of the most common restrictions we are forced to add are on the design dimensions, like which also apply in every other technology. But for example, a minimum thickness of a wall cannot go less than a certain amount, or we cannot cast if there are too many intricate pieces beyond a certain limit. So the first bucket of limitations is design dimensions.
Okay.
The other, which can be worked around or might not be relevant in jewelry, is size. So certain machines come with a fixed size within which you can make one piece. If it's bigger, then we make it in parts and join it together. The third is always the mixing of different materials and combination, which more than a restriction, it is a solution that comes technically, because no single 3D printer is good enough for every application. We've got, out of our 25 3D printers, some of them do really intricate parts well, but they print very slow. Others, they can print super fast, but you're not going to expect any kind of accuracy on small parts. But what when you have a design that needs both? That's when you need the human expertise in the middle, where we get the best of both worlds, print some things on the first printer, print the rest on the second. Sometimes we would also laser cut, CNC machine, or traditionally handcraft a few things. Putting it together is that challenge. So I would say that the solution to technical or design challenges is currently available, but requires humans in the middle, which will always be the case.
Okay. Next question is the weight of gold heavier or lighter in 3D printing versus electrofoam jewelry? That's Farah Khan from Mumbai. She's asking, is the gold weight lighter or heavier in 3D printing?
Oh, so the gold that will be 3D printed is exactly the same that you would cast. Electroforming would, in my understanding, leave only a thin layer to give the shape of the jewelry, which therefore means it's extremely lightweight. Mm-hmm. I would compare 3D printed gold to cast jewelry. So pouring in molten gold, if you can pour it into a lattice-like structure, then that reduces the weight. On a 3D printer, you can take that many notches higher. So if I were to show you something like this, okay. So the animation on the left, you see that each of the units is hollow. If I were designing this on a 3D printer for gold or silver, I could make it even lighter by adding lattices, organic holes and structures that are not visible outside, and thereby reduce the overall weight. But eventually it compares to cast jewelry and not electroformed jewelry.
Okay. Can you cast jewelry in titanium also? Gold and silver you said, but
Absolutely. Titanium can be cast, can be 3D printed.
okay. How do young and upcoming designers, one second, should approach this innovative and continuously upgrading jewelry industry?
So for one, let's talk. We're happy. As you mentioned earlier, we're always happy to welcome somebody into our facility. If you can make it to Mumbai and if you're around, I'll give you a tour of what we do. That itself, many a times becomes the first eye opener for our budding designers. But when you can't make it, of course, there are resources on our website. But try and delve deeper into all of the tools that I mentioned today and study from brands that are applying all of these in the best ways possible. So the keywords for you to research more on-demand manufacturing, digital fabrication, mass customization and mass personalization, and of course 3D printing, direct metal 3D printing. These are some of the directions which will give you that first boost. And after that, it's easy to network. It's a small community. I'll be happy to make connections if even personally, but there's no dearth of tools or resources available out there.
How expensive is it, Tanmay? Is it like, for example, if I have a design which is a unique design and I want to get it manufactured, would it, and you said you do manufacture even one piece, right?
Yeah.
So is it economical for me to come to an Imaginarium kind of a setup to get a very, very accurate and a very perfectly made product versus going to a Karigar and getting it made where I'm okay to let go of certain manufacturing perfections because it's much cheaper?
Got it. So one way to put this in context is currently Imaginarium serves around 5,000 clients in the jewelry space. And that spectrum goes all the way from the largest online marketplaces to up and coming student designers. And all of them have been able to afford our services. What I'm trying to say is that this is now the default way of making jewelry. Yeah, it's the combinations or the technology enhancement. They've made it part of the process and not a side activity. And to the other question that you mentioned, the affordability because of a single unit, it doesn't matter. Like I said, 3D printing allows you to make a single piece at no additional cost. So if you're looking for a single prototype, it'll be as affordable as if you're making 20 of the same.
No, but versus a Karigar, would it be cheaper?
Oh, yes, on that point. So think of what we're doing as having a great team of Karigars or craftsmen coupled with a great team of material scientists, production engineers, CAD designers, artists, etc., all working together on your project. So the challenges that you might have personally faced on a one-on-one craftsmanship, craftsman basis, they're critical. I'm not saying that's not important, but those challenges can get eliminated when you translate it to a digital platform where you can communicate a little easier. You can approach us. So on the access and ease of use part, I think Imaginarium would be a great partner to work with.
Yeah, but on the cost front?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It matches. I think a large chunk of our customers are Karigars themselves, the craftsmen themselves, who don't have the machinery. So for some of their projects, they outsource to us. So even the craftsmen themselves are using our services.
Oh, that is interesting. There is someone who's anonymous. They want you to repeat the plastic with the gold concept.
Sure, it's just a trigger that comes to mind, that if you as a designer create a collection that merges something that is conventionally precious like gold with something that is conventionally not precious at all like plastic, and you fuse them together in your product and still manage to communicate its uniqueness and its speciality, that would be an interesting test for you to enter this new world already. Because I spoke about that when talking of 3D printed nylon. Now that is also plastic, but the process and the form that you give that plastic changes everything. So that was just a project or a challenge being given out in the spur of the moment.
Okay, perfect. I think there are a lot of questions that Imaginarium team is also answering parallelly on the Q&A board. So they have answered quite a lot of questions.
Do you want to give some of these guys the mic? Anyone who wants to ask the question?
Yeah, anybody who wants to ask a question by themselves, I can give access. I can unmute them. Anybody, you can raise your hands if anybody wishes to ask. Okay, there are. Okay, Pinank Vora. Okay, Pinank, are you there? Hello, Pinank, are you there? Pinank, you'll have to 1 second.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hi Pinank.
Hi, Preeta. Hi, Tanmay. How are you guys?
Hi, Pinank.
Yeah, we actually, I'm already working with Imaginarium, so I'm pretty much aware of your facility.
Oh, perfect.
What makes me ask you the question is, are you also into making of CNC bands, like the 5-axis CNC bands also, Tanmay?
If I heard you correctly, you asked, are we also into CNC for jewelry?
Like,
is that your
question? CNC bands, like CNC cups bands? Or, yeah, okay.
Yes, we also offer CNC machining for bands and other components in silver primarily.
Okay. Because I've been to your facility, down to your factory as well as your office. I haven't seen that same CNC machine as yet. So
it's a recent addition. Yeah.
Okay, it's a recent one. Okay. I'm continuously in touch with Mr. Mehta and Mr. Matalia, basically.
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
yeah. So so basically I associate with Kundan Suri Kuchar as well. So. And very soon we'll be getting in touch. Actually, I've already asked Mr. Mehta about how about we doing platinum, because platinum right now it's all-time low and gold is going all-time high.
Yeah.
So from the commercial angles, if we are looking at making platinum, how good are you with making platinum jewelry?
Sure, let's have that chat. Thank you.
Later. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next, there are a lot of questions. So I have Monish Kannan here, who wishes to ask a question. Monish, are you there? Can you unmute your mic, Monish? I am trying to unmute from here. It's not happening. Okay, I think they've left. Chirag Chaudhary wishes to ask a question. Chirag, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, perfect.
Hi, Chirag.
Hi. So I've used Imaginarium services before for my gold and diamond jewelry. My question is regarding the silver products that we're making right now. So if we have to do the cost comparison for making silver jewelry, wherein we design a piece and get it casted, 3D printed and get it casted multiple times in terms of 10s and 20s. So can that cost be brought down? Can we reduce the step of polishing it at the end?
Absolutely. So, Chirag, the way we work out cost optimization is sometimes the design, even after the first casting, we can make a mold from it. And making a mold eliminates the other overhead costs later on. So, that's one way of saving costs. The other is if it can be, there can be lesser manual intervention. So, like you said, if it can be polished through an auto polisher, it reduces the amount of time, the human effort. So those are the ways throughout for any material where we can bring down costs for bulk quantities.
Okay, and just to add to that question, the idea was, can it be so fine in terms of 3D printing that you don't require polishing at all? Once you cast it, it is almost as good as ready.
I have not come across it myself yet. That's an interesting question, but I doubt that's possible because casting always leaves surface undulations and porosities and things like that. It's a nature of the process. So a mirror finish from casting to me seems very, very difficult. But I'm not a technical expert on that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for this.
Sure, thanks.
Perfect. I think 1 second, let me disable Chirag. Perfect. I think Tanmay, that brings us to the end of our session. It's been a long session, and I hope everybody enjoyed. If you still have any more questions, please note down our email IDs, Instagram handles. We will be more than happy to answer, to connect you to the right team, right technology. And one thing that I would like to end with is that if you're in Bombay, you please, I know travel right now is difficult, but if you're in Mumbai next time, whenever, please do visit their facilities. They do these live sessions, knowledge tours, technical tours, and just spend some time in their office. It is a mind opener, and I would really recommend everybody doing that. So thank you everybody for joining. We will try and answer whatever questions are left over emails and phone or whatever medium. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Jewelry Outlook, David, Jayant, and Tanmay. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, be safe. Everybody stay safe. It's the most important right now.
Thank you everyone for attending. See you. Thanks, Preeta, for being a great host.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.